If I remember correctly, rent is due.
From the window to the wall, I did walk right into that, didn't I? I ran into an issue. I was wondering when it was gonna happen, and it happened. Yay! Hey guys, what's up, and welcome to my channel. This week, I am getting started on yet another revamp of a space in my house. And actually, I am revisiting a room that was one of the first makeovers I ever did in my house. If you are new here, or you haven't been a subscriber very long, welcome to my bedroom. It is looking a little bit different than how it's looked over the last 4 years. I already went ahead and stripped it down to get ready for this makeover. And I also just realized a few days ago that 4 years ago, after I tackled the initial makeover of my bedroom, I moved on to doing the initial makeover of my screened-in patio. And well, my screened-in patio is now all revamped, so I guess it's time to revisit my bedroom. And the first time I tackled the makeover for my bedroom, I was a very new DIYer. I also didn't really have a sense of what my interior design style was, and I was on a very tight budget. I think I spent maybe 300 bucks on this makeover. I basically painted the room and did a board and batten wall. And that was the extent of the makeover. And over the last 4 years, this room has slowly but surely started to bother me more and more. No matter how much I try to freshen it up and clean it up, it still feels a little off. And also, like my screened-in patio, no matter how much I clean it, it still feels a little dirty. So I am ready to revisit this space with a fresh perspective and way more experience. So with all of that being said, let's get into it and let's start revamping this bedroom. So first things first, I am running out to get supplies for this makeover. I already calculated out everything I need. And if you saw my last vlog, this is gonna be a little bit of a recap of my plans for this room, but I promise I am going to keep this brief. So I have been pushing off this bedroom makeover for a while now for two main reasons. The main reasons are I would love at some point to do a big, large bathroom renovation, and then I would also love to do a closet makeover. But both of those makeovers are fairly expensive and they're just not a priority at this point, so they could be years down the road. But every time I thought about doing a bedroom makeover, I thought these future renovations are going to completely destroy whatever makeover I do in the space, so let's just wait until I can do a bathroom renovation and a closet makeover. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that if I am strategic about what I do in this makeover, both a bathroom renovation and closet makeover should not affect what I do in this room too much. So here is my plan. So I have been dreaming of taking my bedroom blue. It is one of my favorite colors. It's also really peaceful and really calm. But another combo I love is mixing warm tones and cool tones. So that is basically my plan. I'm taking the walls blue and then I'm filling the room with a bunch of warm accents. And I want to elevate this bedroom through bold colors, molding, and patterns. So first up is working on the walls, all of them. I'm tossing around two different ideas, either fully color drenching this bedroom or doing a variation where I paint the walls and the trim and I wallpaper the ceiling. But that is a decision for another time because I have so much work to do on these walls before I even think about working on the ceiling. And first up is working on some box molding. And since my closet makeover is so far in the future, I want to do a budget-friendly closet door makeover to make the doors look nice in the meantime. So I got everything I need for these door makeovers and box trim. So I'm gonna head home so I can test out all of the blue paint samples that I got, because I have to find a blue paint that I am going to love for a very long time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have all of my paint samples and I am not getting started on the molding or the door trim today because I have a lot of work to do on these walls. There's lots of holes all over the place that I have to fill in, and then I'm gonna have to sand them back, and I also have to just like wipe down these walls because they are gross. But before I get to all of that boring work, I am gonna test out these samples. Up first, we've got Van Cortlandt Blue by Benjamin Moore. And I don't know exactly what I want in this blue. I don't know how light or dark I want to take it, but I do know what I don't want in this color. I do not want this blue to be too purple, and I don't want it to be too green. I also don't want it to be too gray, but I do want a touch of gray. That's pretty. So next up, we have Slate Blue by Benjamin Moore. I also should probably do a test on the ceiling as well. Jamestown Blue. Well, I am in Virginia. Ooh, that's very blue. This is the last Benjamin Moore sample that I got. This is Santorini Blue. Ooh. Okay, first Sherwin-Williams paint. This is Debonair. That's very pretty. It's very close to Cortland Blue. Slate Tile. Ooh, yeah, that's really dark. Okay, this is the last one. This is Morning at Sea. Really pretty. I think too gray. I feel like I need to take a step back. Okay, I tested out the paints that I like on the ceiling because I really didn't need to like try this one out because I already know it's too dark. And then that one over there is too blue. There, in my mind, is two that I'm really going back and forth on. In some lights, when I look at it, one of them is number one, and then I like look at it again, and then the other one is number one. So I'm going back and forth between Van Cortlandt Blue by Benjamin Moore and Debonair. Debonair, I think, has like a tiny lead as of right now. But I'm gonna let all of these samples sit and dry. I'll probably do a second coat so that I can truly see what it looks like. So while I wait for that stuff to dry, I'm gonna get started working on these walls and doing all of the boring stuff of just making sure these are ready for molding and for painting. So I will see you guys in the morning. Good morning, guys. It is time to tackle some trim, and I think this should actually be pretty easy. I know that it's like famous last words because every time I say this is gonna be quick and easy, it ends up not being quick and easy, but I realized there's really not that much wall space in this room, which means there's not that many boxes to make and get installed. And also another thing that is gonna make this so much nicer and so much easier is my setup. Since I was able to fully clear out this room, I decided to move my miter saw in here so I can just do the cuts in this room, which is going to be so nice because usually I am running back and forth between outside and inside, and it gets really tiring. And I actually went ahead and already cut my first few pieces for the first wall I'm working on, so let's get to work. First thing I am going to do is get this chair rail piece installed, and then we can go from there. I'm gonna put this at 28 inches, which is the same height as the chair rail piece for the box molding in my living room. Okay, so now that I have my chair rail piece installed, I'm gonna go ahead and get the two boxes installed that I have planned for this wall. And I've done box molding 2 other times in my house. And once you do box molding once, you start to learn tips and tricks that make installing box molding so much easier. One of the big things that is super helpful is just having little spacer pieces. This one is 5 inches, which is my horizontal spacing. And then I've got a spacer right here that's 3 inches, and that is my vertical spacing. I still have a level to make sure everything is good, but a lot of times the spacer works out great and keeps everything level. That is good. That is good. We are level. Perfect. And up until last night, I actually had a different configuration for the boxes on the wall behind my bed. I was gonna do 3 boxes that were equal in size until I realized that that would kind of affect being able to put things on my wall where I wanna put them. So I changed up the configuration where I'm doing a bigger box behind my bed, and then on each side of that big box, there will be 2 thinner boxes. Since I switched to that wall, I actually switched this wall from being 4 boxes, 2 at the top and 2 at the bottom, to 2 2 boxes where there'll be one big box at the bottom, one big box at the top. And I actually think this will frame out my vanity really nicely. So I like to do cleanup work as I install trim, because cleanup work is one of my least favorite things to do, but it is very important because it makes your trim look really, really nice and seamless. But I like to do it as I work, because if I save this all for the end, I would get wildly unmotivated and I would stop several times and it would take me 10 times longer. Whereas I find I'm more motivated if I break it up. For all of my upper boxes, the spacing is gonna be just a tiny bit different. So I'm gonna be doing the normal 3 inches between the chair rail piece and the start of the box, but at the top between my ceiling and where this box is going to end is gonna be 5 inches. I am doing this to be strategic about those future projects I talked about at the beginning of the video. Eventually, I want to do crown molding in this room, but it doesn't make sense right now to do the crown molding because, well, basically I'd have to rip it all out when I get to these 2 projects. So I am leaving 5 inches from the ceiling to the trim so that eventually when I can get to doing crown molding, I have the space to do it. Yay, first wall is done. Let's cut some more trim. Okay, now I can work on the boxes behind my bed. So the first thing I need to do is get this chair rail piece put in. And I think since this chair rail piece is wrapping around to this wall, I'll go ahead and get that piece installed as well. And I am putting this piece up first. It's a piece with a straight cut and then a beveled cut on this side because one trim piece can't make it all the way across this wall. So now that I have this chair rail piece all installed, I am gonna go ahead and get to work installing all the rest of the boxes, even this wall. And I am just rinsing and repeating the process that I did on the first wall, using my spacers as my guide, using my level when needed, and doing cleanup work as I go. The last time I did box molding in my living room, I got a ton of comments from people saying that you love the look of box molding, but calculating out the boxes and how much supplies to get is really intimidating. So here is my quick and dirty way of how I figure out how wide I want my boxes to be and how much supplies I need to do my box molding. I'll use these 3 boxes behind my bed as an example. So for the vertical trim, it is very easy for me because I have standard 8-foot high ceilings and my trim pieces come in 8-foot long pieces. So I take each vertical section, the top box and the bottom box, as one piece. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is 6 pieces. Now for the chair rail, from the window to the wall, I did walk right into that, didn't I? From the window to the corner is just over 10 feet, and this whole wall across is about 15 feet. So since I'm working with 8-foot long pieces, I just times that by 2, I get 16. So I tack on 2 extra pieces for just the chair rail. Now the horizontal trim is where you have to do the most amount of calculations. So for these 3 boxes, from the window to the corner is 129 3/4 of an inch. And then you gotta figure out your spacing. So in this case, I'm working with 5 inches of space between the boxes, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. 4 times 5 is 20. So I minused 20 from that 129 3/4, and it leaves me with 109 3/4. Now from there, if you want 3 equal boxes, you just divide that number by however many boxes you wanted. In this case, I divided by 3. But in this case, I played around with it. This center box is 60 inches, so I minus 60 and then divided by 2 so that I knew the width of the 2 outside boxes so that they were even and equal. Now, to figure out how many trim pieces you need for just the horizontal pieces, I go back to that 109 3/4 and I times it by 4 because there are 4, I guess we'll call them fields of horizontal trim. Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, that gives me 436 inches. So for this next part, sorry if you use the metric system, I use the imperial system. So with that 436 inches, I divide that by 12 inches in a foot, and then I divide that number by 8 because my pieces of trim come in 8-foot long sections. And then if I remember correctly, that number is just over 4.5 pieces just for the horizontal trim. So I round that up to 5 pieces for the horizontal trim on this wall. And also, if you're gonna do box molding, always tack on a few extra pieces to whatever number it is that you calculate out, because if you're anything like me, wrong cuts are going to happen. And then also, you might hit a point where you technically have enough inches of trim to make your box, but the trim you have left is gonna be a bunch of scrap pieces. And then you'd have to puzzle together a box, which obviously wouldn't look very nice. Whew. And I am done. Good morning, guys. Actually, you know what? Why am I saying good morning? Good afternoon. I am getting a much later start than I would have liked to, but I had a lot of work I had to get done this morning. So that being said, I can't get much done today because I'm getting such a late start, but I at least want to try to attempt at getting something done. And I think I can make a significant dent on this closet door makeover. If you've been a subscriber for a little bit, I did a very similar door makeover for the closet doors that are in my studio. And although this closet door makeover is very similar to the one in my studio, I also am going to be doing things just a little bit different. The upper half of these doors is going to be, well, completely different, and I will explain what I'm doing when I get to working on the upper half of the doors. I'm gonna start with working on the bottom half of the doors, which is a very similar concept to what I did in my studio. I got these beaded panels that I'm going to get attached using construction adhesive and nails. I then also went ahead and cut all of the trim that I need to frame out this panel, and I'm using the same trim that I used on the wall so that everything looks nice and cohesive. So I'm gonna get to work attaching all of that and doing the cleanup work, and hopefully I can get to working on the upper half of the doors, but that might be a project for tomorrow. Good morning, guys. Yeah, it was very late once I finished working on these bottom panels. And speaking of bottom panels, they look so nice. Something I forgot to mention yesterday is that I did also specifically cut the panels so that it was even stripes across. I did have to play around with the cuts a little bit, but I think it looks really nice. And if you saw my vlog, you know that my plans for this closet door makeover changed slightly. My original plan was to just rinse and repeat the same process for the upper half of the doors, but then I got the idea to cut out these slatted slatted pieces, and I'm gonna be doing gathered fabric panels for the top. I think this is gonna break up the wall really nicely. I think it's gonna add a nice soft touch. And of course, I can also pick out a fabric that has a slight pattern. But of course, I have to wait until I paint and potentially wallpaper my ceiling to pick out a fabric for these doors. So my plan for right now is to just cut out these slatted pieces to see what I'm working with, because my guess is I'm gonna have to get some kind of trim to clean up the inside of the doors, but I can figure out what I need to do while I paint. It is time to start painting. I am so excited. And actually, I was just looking at the closet doors, and I think I might be able to take some spackle and fill in those holes, or at least I'm gonna try it. If it doesn't look great, I can always get some trim, but I think that might look really nice if I just take my time and kind of sand through layers and stuff like that. But that's a project for another day. I am gonna get to painting because I have a lot of painting to get done. And actually having a few days between when I tested out the samples and now today where I went and picked up the paint, it was really nice having that time because I got to see the colors in all different types of lighting. And the color that I just absolutely loved in every single lighting, and I think it was the perfect amount of a darker blue, but not too dark, was Debonair by Sherwin-Williams. It is such a beautiful blue. But I will say, Van Cortlandt Blue and Morning at Sea, they made it hard. They made it hard to pick out which color I was gonna go with. So I am gonna get to painting. I'm not gonna waste your time watching endless clips of me painting for probably days on end. But if there is anything that pops up that I think is valuable information to have, I will stop and let you guys know. So I am going around the two walls that I have painted, which is this wall and this wall, and I'm marking 12 inches out from the wall. And I am gonna start to work on something that is gonna happen no matter what I do on the ceilings. So if I go with wallpaper, I am still going to be carrying the paint onto the ceiling slightly, about 9 to 12 inches away from the wall. This is a little trick you can do to make your ceilings look and feel a little bit higher up, because the color extends past where the ceiling and the wall meet, so it draws your eye up and past where the ceiling and the wall meet. So I have 12 inches marked out from the wall, so I'm gonna go ahead and paint a strip. Nothing like a 5 p.m. latte to get you through the rest of your day and the work you have to get done. Nothing like it. Good afternoon, guys. I keep saying that in this video, but unlike a few days ago where I had other work to do, today I have been hard at work in this room trying to get as much done as I possibly can. I started off doing the second coat of paint on the walls and that little strip on the ceiling, and the paint looks so nice. I love this color. It is the perfect blue. It's exactly what I was picturing in my mind. And then once I finished the second coat, I had to go ahead and prep the doors and everything for paint as well. And the most time consuming part was prepping the closet doors. So I did end up going and getting trim to cover up the holes on the sides because I realized there were some parts that were so beat up that no amount of spackle was gonna be able to cover up the damage. So I went and got some really thin PVC trim and I used that to cover up the holes. But before I could go ahead and install that trim, there was like a little lip at the bottom of each opening on the doors that was really getting in the way. So I first cut that back and then sanded it, and then I could go ahead and install the side trim. And I also had just enough trim to line the bottom half of the opening where that ledge used to be. And then I did cleanup work to fill in the gap between the trim and the doors. I filled in nail holes. So I'm really hoping I can get through the first coat of paint on everything tonight so that tomorrow morning I can quickly do the second coat and then get to working on my ceiling. You know, whatever I'm doing up there. I'm just joking. I already know what I'm doing, but that's for tomorrow. Good morning, guys. I just finished the first coat on my built-ins and these last few doors that I had to paint. And instead of moving on to the second coat of paint, I figured I should probably get started on this next endeavor while I have a little pep in my step, while it's still early in the day and the caffeine is flowing. So that being said, I am wallpapering my ceiling, which you guys most likely know because I most likely will put it in my thumbnail. But for the last several days, it has been truly up in the air whether I was going to wallpaper my ceiling or not. And that's just because I really couldn't find a wallpaper that I felt hit all of the criteria that I needed it to fit. So that being said, I finally found her. She's cute, we like her. So I'm gonna get started cleaning up this space because I feel like installing wallpaper on my ceiling in a nice clean space is gonna make the installation just go a little bit nicer. So if you saw my vlog, you know that I got a wallpaper that was an option. Well, I ended up not really liking that wallpaper for several different reasons, but the main reason was that it did feel a little bit too feminine for the space. I didn't want a super duper feminine wallpaper because this also is my husband's bedroom and I like to do things and choose options that I think fit him and fit his style. And I also thought that it was a little too plain. I realized I did want a little bit more of a pattern than that option. I also didn't want a patterned wallpaper that it's so bold that that's all you notice when you walk into my bedroom. The other thing that made picking out this wallpaper really hard, which some of you guys might be disappointed in, is that I needed this wallpaper to be peel and stick. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I do have future plans and renovations for my closet and my bathroom. Part of that renovation is bumping my bathroom out into my bedroom just a little bit. Since I'd be bumping the bathroom into this space, I'd also have to bump the wallpaper back. And I would much rather just be able to cut back the little bit and remove it, whereas with normal wallpaper, it would be a big old pain. The final thing that was probably the thing that made this the most difficult to find wallpaper. I do not have a ginormous budget. There are several websites where they have beautiful peel and stick wallpaper. Those wallpapers are anywhere from like $80 to like $130, $50 a roll, something like that, which would make wallpapering my ceiling well over $1,000, if not close to $1,000. So I found a wallpaper that's a nice, reasonable $35 a roll. So it obviously is a lot more budget friendly. Let's do this thing. And if you know anything about wallpapering, you know that the first panel is the most important panel. So I am creating a plumb line that is 9 inches away from the wall. A plumb line is just a line that you know is perfectly level so that you can install your panel against that plumb line and you know your first panel is perfectly straight. And you can't just measure from the wall in 9 inches because most likely your wall is not straight. So in this case, I'm using a laser level. I measured 9 inches from the wall and I have my laser right on that 9-inch mark. And I'm gonna use some painter's tape to mark out this line. Okay guys, not gonna lie, that sucked. And I also realized that one of my cameras wasn't filming, which is a big old bummer, but at least my second one was. I'm just cleaning up any bubbles, really scraping this through. And I think for the second panel, I am going to recruit the help of my husband. I ran into an issue. I was wondering when it was gonna happen, and it happened. Yay! I went to order all of the wallpaper that I needed for this project, and they had a limited quantity on Amazon. So I ordered what I could on Amazon, and then I also found this wallpaper at Home Depot, so I went ahead and ordered the rest of the rolls that I needed from Home Depot. I didn't think to open either of those packages. Yeah, so the Home Depot order, perfectly fine and great. The Amazon order, they sent me the wrong color. So I went ahead and tried to reorder this wallpaper, and it's magically out of stock on both Amazon and Home Depot. So I luckily did just find it on another website. I went ahead and ordered the 2 extra rolls that I need to complete this. So this wallpaper should be here in 1 to 2 days. I'm hoping it's gonna be here in 1 day because I do leave for a trip to visit my family in 3 days. So I'm really wanna get this project done before I leave on this trip. So I was at a little bit of a standstill on this project because I wasn't sure if I was even gonna be able to complete this project, but it looks like I can, and hopefully they do send me the right color. But I'm gonna go ahead and get what I do have hung up today. I have help, yay. I have done 1 row by myself, 1 row with my husband. Honestly, both kind of equally were not fun. So I'm gonna try this row by myself again. I feel like I'm starting to get the hang of it. It's still not fun. Every row is not fun, but you get through it. And I did go ahead and take down my fan so that I am ready to go for the 4th row, which I think is where I'm gonna have to cut around that thing. It's just getting started on each row, that's the hard part. I got up all of the pieces of wallpaper that I currently have, and of course the last piece I ended up making a mistake and lining the pattern up wrong, and I didn't realize it was wrong until I was like halfway through, so I had to try to pull it back and start over. But then all of the peel and stick stuck to itself. So for this final row that I did, I had to Frankenstein pieces from what I had left over that I've cut off the previous rows. But I did a nice job lining up the patterns so you can't really tell. So now that the wallpaper on my ceiling is done for the time being, I'm gonna move on to painting the second coat of paint on all of the doors and trim, and I'll see you guys in the morning. Good morning, guys. I am a little bummed, but not too bummed, but I'm a little bummed. It looks like I am not gonna be able to finish up wallpapering my ceiling in this video. I got an email saying that they're not gonna have this wallpaper in stock for another week, which means they are estimating I'm gonna get it in about 2 weeks. I also don't think I've mentioned this yet, but I do plan on trimming out this wallpaper to create a nice border for where the ceiling is painted and where this wallpaper starts. So I'm really excited to see that all done. So even though I can't finish wallpapering my ceiling, there is one project I can finish up, and that is my closet doors. So I went ahead and picked up 6 yards of this brown and white fabric. I also went with really cheap fabric because I am at the beginning of this makeover and I was a little nervous that I'm gonna work my way through a bunch of these projects and then all of a sudden this fabric isn't gonna match the look and feel I want it to have. I don't know, I don't think that's gonna happen, but just in case, I went with nice cheap fabric. So what I did is I cut these into strips that are 44 inches long, and I cut from salvaged edge to salvaged edge. And because I did that, I didn't have to hem the sides. I just had to hem and create a channel at the top and bottom for a curtain rod to go through. And before I went ahead and sewed these up, I double checked my measurements at every point in each panel to make sure it was exactly 40.5 inches long so that there's equal tension between the top curtain rod and the bottom curtain rod. I have these really thin curtain rods that I got off of Amazon, and I'm just gonna stick this through the channel that I created, and then the rods came with these little hooks. So I'm just going to drill a little hole, screw these in, and then this will hold up the top of the curtain rod. And then I'm just gonna rinse and repeat the process for the bottom half. And just like that, we have a door all complete. Now I can just kind of play with the gathering. Yay, that looks so good. The nice thing about this closet door makeover is that it is very much choose your own adventure and choose your budget. As you can probably tell, I did not take the time to make the inside of the doors look nice. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I do have a big closet makeover planned at some point, so this is very much just a temporary solution. But if you had similar doors to this and you wanted to do this project and it was not a temporary solution, I definitely recommend taking the time to add some paneling to the inside of the doors and painting the inside of the doors. A few years ago when I tackled a very similar project in my studio, I did take the time to add paneling on both the outside and the inside of the doors. The other nice thing is that you can also pick which look you like and also what fits your budget the best. If you wanted to, you could do fabric on both the top and bottom section, which would make this project just a bit cheaper than the paneling and fabric combo. And if you had the budget and you liked the look, you could do paneling on both the top and bottom section. So now that the fabric is installed, I'm gonna go ahead and add some new hardware, and this closet door makeover will be complete. And that is it, guys. Even though part 1 did not go according to plan, I am still really happy with everything I was able to accomplish. And although I have not, of course, finished wallpapering my ceiling, I feel like I've done enough of it that I can definitely give you guys some advice on wallpapering your ceiling. 1, You definitely gotta be comfortable being uncomfortable, because wallpapering your ceiling is very uncomfortable. And also you're probably gonna get a little dizzy trying to line up patterns. But even though it is an uncomfortable process, it's one wall and it doesn't last long. Now, if you were to wallpaper your ceiling using normal wallpaper, that I think is definitely a two-person job. But with the peel and stick, there were points where my husband was super helpful, and then there were points where I also felt like I could tackle it on my own. Also, the first row that my husband helped me with was a little chaotic, just because I was still figuring out what I needed to do to wallpaper the ceiling, so I couldn't really effectively communicate how he could help me. So just know, even if there are two people, it's still gonna probably be a little chaotic until you figure out exactly what you need to do to wallpaper your ceiling. I am still really happy with everything I was able to finish. I absolutely love the box molding. It adds such a nice touch to this space, and I also love the blue that I chose. I think it is the perfect blue for this space. I personally am not a fan of super light blue, so this isn't too light, but it's also not too dark. Even though a few years ago I added a very large window to the space, this room still doesn't get a ton of sunlight, so I didn't want to take this blue too dark and really close in the space. So I feel like it is just the perfect amount of darkness that it doesn't close in this space. And finally, even though my husband thinks I use this word too much, I have mentioned this in the past, I am obsessed with my closet doors. For the last few years, I have been very impatiently waiting to do a closet makeover, very impatiently, but it was not a priority, not in the budget. So now that I have done this budget-friendly door makeover, I feel like I can push off doing a closet makeover for at least a few years. I love these doors. They did exactly what I wanted them to do, and I'm also really glad that last minute I changed my plans and decided to add the fabric to the top half. The fabric does also exactly what I wanted it to do. It breaks up this whole wall of blue in such a nice way. It adds a different color, it adds some pattern, it adds a nice soft touch, and I just think it is really, really pretty. So that's everything for part one. I hope you guys liked this video and all of these projects. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.